Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. And to be honest, I don't think I need to give you much of an intro here. You know exactly what we're here to talk about, but if this is your first time at the channel, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. But yeah, Donovan Mitchell just dropped 71 points, which is absurd. It ties the 8th highest game scoring-wise in NBA history, and not only that, but he had 11 dimes and 8 boards. It was the first 70 and 10 game in NBA history, and between the 71 points that he scored and the 11 buckets that he assisted on, it was the second most points created for a team by a player in the history of the sport, only behind Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game. Absurd, absolutely ridiculous performance, one of the greatest we've ever seen, which feels like it's starting to become a trend with this NBA season. It feels like every other day we're seeing a player drop 50, 60, and we'll talk about that in a second. But first, let's go ahead and give Donovan Mitchell his time in the spotlight, and also talk about how I kind of predicted this game just earlier today. Probably the craziest part about Donovan Mitchell scoring 71 points is that it really did not seem like it was going to happen whatsoever in the first half. He had just 16 points heading into the break, and the Bulls were up by as much as 21 points on the Cavs over the course of this game. It felt like it was going to go to a blowout, and sure, Donovan Mitchell might get his 30, maybe even 40 points, but that the Cavaliers were going to in the end lose, and it felt like that all the way up until the end. But Donovan Mitchell slowly started to take over more and more. He would eventually have 55 points in the second half in overtime, and down the stretch he was so critical, leading the Cavaliers to a massive comeback, and very eerily similar to how Luka scored the game-tying bucket heading into overtime in his 60-point performance. Donovan Mitchell misses a free throw on purpose and manages to get a crazy tip in. I don't know how the Chicago Bulls don't box him out. After the game, Billy Donovan complained, saying that it was a lane violation, but you've got like 3 7-footers out there. They put in Andre Drummond, all their big men, and they still couldn't secure a single rebound over like a 6'3 guard in Donovan Mitchell, who had a crazy tip in, amazing court awareness to get to exactly where that rebound was. Most guys will try and throw it like really hard off the rim to bounce back to them, but instead he kind of had this looping free throw, so it would give him a high bounce so he could catch it, go up and put it back in. Just amazing play from Donovan Mitchell, and in overtime he took over completely, hitting crazy threes, absolutely fearless. Even if you didn't know he had 70 points, it was very clear that Donovan Mitchell needed to be continuously getting the ball, hitting crazy threes, attacking the basket, going to the free throw line, eventually to go ahead and score the final few points of his performance. It was amazing. It felt like for a second he wasn't going to get all the way up to 70, which would have been a real heartbreaker, but he did end up doing it, settling himself down in history as one of the greatest scoring performances we've ever seen. And like I said earlier in the video, I kind of predicted this happening. Less than 3 hours before Donovan Mitchell was getting thrown water on by his teammates and celebrating at center court after scoring 70 points, I dropped a video about my 10 bold predictions for the calendar year of the NBA 2023. It was kind of my way of saying Happy New Year, and there were some interesting predictions on there. Guys requesting trades, guys staying on franchises that you might think that they won't, predicting that Jokic would win his 3rd straight MVP, stuff like that. Make sure to go check out that video if you haven't already. But one of those predictions, I believe it was my 7th out of the 10 predictions, I said that in the calendar year of 2023, we would see a player score 70 plus points. My next bold prediction is that someone in the NBA scores 70 points over the course of 2023. This might seem kind of crazy, as the last time we saw 70 points came from Devin Booker, and before that, it's very rare that we ever see a player score 70 plus points in a game. But the way scoring is going right now, in particular, Luka Doncic is a name I'm keeping an eye on. He had 60 points the other night in a triple-double effort. He's had 50 in 2 of his other last 5 games. He's a scoring machine, and he is the guy in particular that I'm looking at to maybe put up this feat. But the way that we're seeing 50 bombs, 60 bombs, I think a 70 bomb isn't that far off. I think somebody will just say, hey, I'm going to take over tonight, score 70 points, and it's one of those memorable moments that we look back on and say, wow, offensive talent is better than it's ever been. And my logic was, we were seeing Luka score 60 points and 50 points every other night. We're seeing multiple 50-point performances from a bunch of other guys as well. It felt like 70 points was only a matter of time. But it is kind of bold because 70 plus points has very rarely been done in NBA history. Like I said, this performance ties the 8th highest scoring margin we've ever seen, so it's not like it happens every other day, but to me, it felt like we were due for one. And the last time we saw 70 came 5 years ago from D Book, so to me, it felt like it was only a matter of time, and it happened literal hours after I made that prediction, which is crazy because typically, I have this cone curse. Once again, you're not familiar with the channel. Basically, if I talk positively about a player or a team, they all of a sudden start playing terribly, and vice versa. versa. However, maybe 2023 is going to be my year because it seems like the cone curse might have been broken with probably my best prediction yet. We'll see if the rest of those bold predictions come true, but in this case, it happened basically right away. So shout out to Donovan Mitchell, one of the best performances of all time, and I really can't believe that I called it. Also, one more time, I want to give the Cavs a shout out for the Donovan Mitchell trade. I loved it when it happened. It felt like the perfect destination for him, as well as the Cavaliers picking up basically the perfect player to add to their core, giving Darius Garland a great running mate in the backcourt that could take some of the scoring pressure off of him, while still being a pretty solid playmaker. He stepped up defensively too. You've got two great defensive players as well in Evan Mobley and Jared Allen down low to take some of that burden off of them defensively as well. All they basically need is a 3, and they're almost ready to compete for a championship if they aren't already ready now. They've got some pretty good depth. I would love to see them get a better starting 3 next to those core 4 guys, but overall the Cavaliers are in such a great spot. The Donovan Mitchell trade was genius. I loved it when it happened, and I'm loving it even more now as games like this continue to come along. He's a legit MVP candidate. He's been the best guard in the Eastern Conference this season. So shout out to Spida, shout out to the Cavaliers, and just shout out to the front office for managing to rebuild this team so quickly after LeBron left them back in 2018, and they were pretty much without any prospects outside of like Colin Sexton. Just a few years later, they've got a guy that can score 70 points, 4 potential all-stars on the roster total, and right now they look like a borderline championship contender. Meanwhile, while Donovan Mitchell was dropping 70, Klay Thompson had a 54-point performance against the Atlanta Hawks, a huge game for him as he continues to find his way back to his old self. He was knocking down threes, he had a clutch shot here and there down the stretch as well, just completely took over, exactly what you would expect from the Klay Thompson of old, and this game in particular was just absolutely absurd. It went to double overtime. It felt like there were multiple daggers back and forth, but somehow the other team just kept fighting their way back. Draymond Green hit probably the ugliest 3 I've ever seen to go ahead and maybe steal this game. DeJounte and Trae Young fought back, hitting a 3 and then a couple free throws and a layup here and there, and eventually it came all the way down to the wire where the Warriors took a shot and Kevon Looney managed to tip it back up and in after a couple attempts to seal this one. Shout out to Kevon Looney, a super underrated player. He had 17 boards in this game, and Golden State is finding ways to get wins despite missing Steph Curry. They've been basically unstoppable when they play in their home arena over the course of this season. If they had home court basically every single game, I don't know if they would ever lose. If they can continue to hold ground like this without Steph Curry, it goes a long way to them reestablishing themselves as true championship contenders. But all that said, Klay Thompson had 54 points, and as he continues to bounce back, it only once again goes further to making the Warriors the threat that they were last season. And between Klay and Donovan Mitchell scoring 50 plus points tonight, we now have 13 50 plus point performances over the course of the season, and some of these names include Donovan Mitchell dropping 71, Luka Doncic having a 60 point 20 rebound triple double, you had Joel Embiid with a 59 point near quadruple double, 58 points from Devin Booker, 55 from Anthony Davis, Klay Thompson's 54 that I just mentioned, Joel Embiid had 53, Pascal Siakam had 52 in the Garden, 51 from Luka Doncic, 51 from Devin Booker, 51 from Darius Garland, and a huge comeback effort against the Minnesota Timberwolves that came up just short, 50 from Luka Doncic and 50 from Steph Curry. That's once again 13 50 plus point games, and the season isn't halfway over yet. That has to be some kind of record. I tried to find the exact statistic. I couldn't find it before the video, but if someone knows exactly what that number is, there's no way there's been this many 50-point performances prior to the All-Star break over the course of any season in the past. We are seeing an offensive explosion. It feels like records are being broken left and right. Like I said, 50-point games, 60-point games, like 4 or 5 of those games I just mentioned came in the last week or maybe even couple of weeks. It's been amazing to watch, and there are a lot of people who are kind of upset with this, saying that they have to do something to slow down offenses, give defense an advantage, but honestly, this is just kind of the progression of the sport. Players are more talented than they've ever been. I know a lot of people like to say like, oh, this was the best era, that was the best era. Strictly in terms of the best basketball players in the NBA at one time, the modern era, as it's always going to continue to be, is the best era. The players in 2040 will be way better than the players now. The players in 2060, 2080 will be so much better than the ones that came before them. Workout regimens, diets, training, guys getting involved with the sport younger and younger, it's only going to continue to raise the skill level. So that's kind of what we're seeing. And I think defenses will eventually catch up. It's just so hard right now when guys can bomb shots from like 50 feet away. They can attack the basket quicker than ever. Maybe eventually they will make a change to kind of help defenses out a bit. But for right now, I'm really enjoying what we've seen. It's been one of those fun NBA seasons in recent memory. It feels like anybody can win the, well, not anybody, but most teams have an opportunity to make a deep playoff run. Several have a chance to win a championship. And any given night, you could see someone go off for a 50-point triple-double, a 60-point triple-double, or in the case of tonight, a 71-point game like we haven't seen ever before. To move on to some of the other games, we had Knicks versus Suns, which came on at like 3 p.m. Eastern. I kind of forgot it was happening until it had already started, but managed to catch a little bit of it. And I want to give a shout to Julius Randle, who led the Knicks in this win over Phoenix. Pretty much a blowout win, by the way, so if you didn't end up catching this one or didn't know it was happening, you didn't miss out on too much. He's been on an absolute tear recently, establishing himself once again as a bona fide all-star candidate. In this game, he had 28 points, 16 rebounds, and 6 assists. Last game, he had 35, 12, and 6. The game before, he had 41, 11, and 7. He's been an absolute monster, continuing to play his best basketball since his All-NBA season a couple of years ago, and right now, this is looking like the best form of Julius Randle that the Knicks have gotten in a very long time. Meanwhile, for the Suns, they weren't able to muster even 90 points in this one. They had just 60 points heading into the third quarter. It's a disaster. Without Devin Booker, this offense just does not function, which was one of the big issues that they had last year. If Chris Paul and Devin Booker were absolutely cooking, they fell apart, and it feels like once again that is the case. They need D-Book to get back healthy sooner than later, but he's still going to be out a few weeks. Their schedule remains really tough, and right now they're sitting at the 8th seed in the Western Conference. I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to fall lower and lower with a tough schedule and not having Devin Booker, making them look very, very vulnerable. And by the time Book returns, they could very well be on the cusp of not even making the play-in tournament. I still think they will, because when Book does come back, they're one of the better teams in the West, but it's very clear that moves need to be made ASAP to help them stay afloat. Next, let's go into Heat versus Clippers, as Miami continues to very slowly and subtly make their way up the Eastern Conference standings. They're now sitting at the 6th seed out East. They got a win tonight over the Clippers, mostly led by Bam Adebayo, who has really led this recent stretch of success. Tonight, he had 31 points and 13 boards. This now makes back-to-back 30-point games for him, and he's up to 21.5 points per game on the season while still playing lockdown defense. He's been their best player so far this year. He's a bona fide all-star lock, and he continues to look better and better. This is his career high in points, and it looks like if he continues to work, be aggressive, and really unlock this offensive game, the sky's the absolute limit for him. So shout out to Bam Adebayo. Love to see him playing like this. And for the Clippers, they had no Kawhi Leonard in this one, and Paul George tweaked his hamstring, so it's looking like once again they're going to be without these two guys, or at least Paul George for maybe a little bit. They cannot get all these guys healthy at one time. It happens here and there, but for the most part, it's a guy resting here, a guy tweaking an injury there, and it just feels like the story of the Clippers these past few seasons has been continuous injuries, the inability to get what looks like a absolutely stacked roster on paper all together fully healthy on the court at one time. The final game I want to go in depth into, because it feels like this video is getting pretty long, is Lakers versus Hornets. LeBron James once again led the way with a 43 point, 11 rebound, 6 point performance. He had a near 47 point triple double the other night on his birthday. Monster performances from LeBron James left and right. It's what he does. It is LeBron James. He still is one of the best players in the world, and I just want to remind y'all, please don't take this for granted. What we are seeing right now from LeBron James does not happen. This is not normal. I know we're seeing like 50-point games and 60-point games and 70-point games, but that's mostly the younger guys in the league, guys younger than 30. Occasionally some guys like mid-30s like Steph Curry, for example, are making these performances happen. But what LeBron James is doing at now 38 years old, it's not normal. We don't ever see this. We have never seen this in the history of the sport, and it may be a very long time before we ever see it again. So please don't take him for granted right now. I know a lot of y'all out there are Bron haters, but make sure to enjoy him while he still is around. It's a shame he has to put on these crazy games just for them to squeak out wins against teams that they should definitely be better than, but that is the state of the Lakers at the moment, especially without Anthony Davis. Hopefully he's able to come back soon. As for Charlotte, LaMelo Ball continues to be one of the lone bright spots for the team over the course of what has been a disastrous year. He had 24 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 dimes. Another great game from him as he continues to look really good coming off of his injury. To quickly wrap up the rest of the games, the Blazers blew up the Pistons behind 36 points from Jeremy Grant, who deserves some all-star buzz in my opinion. The Mavericks beat the Rockets on 39 points, 12 rebounds, and 8 dimes from Luka Doncic, which honestly seems like a pretty normal stat line from him at this point. Anthony Edwards led the Wolves with 29 and 10 in a win over Denver. Kyrie and KD combined for 52 points in a dub over the Spurs and have now won 12 games in a row. Joel Embiid had 42 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 assists in a win over the Pelicans as he dueled Zion Williamson, who unfortunately did suffer an injury. Hopefully he's all good. And finally, Benedict Mathurin dropped 21 points in a win over Toronto as he continues to try and further not only his 6th Man of the Year case, but maybe even a Rookie of the Year bid. With all that being said, I appreciate y'all watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. 2022 was an incredible year for the channel, and 2023 is only going to be way better, so make sure you hang out here for all of the great content that you're going to see. Also, drop in the comment section below who you think the next player to score 50 plus, maybe even 60 plus, or heck, even 70 plus points will be in an NBA game. I'd love to hear who y'all have to say. Appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.